Hey, is anybody in here feeling a little warm? Okay. Well, if people start feeling overheated in here, let me know and I'll open up the door. We've got some windows open and this door open, but ventilation seems to be a challenge. So anyway, welcome everyone. It's 7 o'clock on October the 9th. And this is our second installment of our Sutton Valley Board of Director Candidate Forums. And so I'd like to welcome all of the candidates here. We have all 5, and there are 3 seats open. So 3 of these people sitting in front of you are going to be elected on November 2nd. So get some questions put on these 3x5 cards if you haven't already. There's going to be a couple of different segments, as Tara will explain here in a minute. But I really want to thank everyone for being here and participating in this neighborhood governance process. It doesn't work without people in the audience. It doesn't work without community participation. And really, that's what I'm sure got everyone here involved in actually stepping up to the plate for this very responsible seat that they're running for. And responsibility, as I said last time, is something that every one of these people are willing to take. They need to take responsibility for what they do on the board. And unfortunately, that responsibility doesn't come with any authority, because we're volunteers. And there's no paycheck. That's right, Gail. Hi, Gail. That's right. There are no actual monetary benefits that any board member receives. And as much as some people would like to think otherwise, that's unfortunately not the case. And so we get to take all the responsibility and have none of the authority that goes along with the responsibility. The board as a whole has responsibility, but individual board members don't have any authority. So they have a vote, that's it. And responsibility to know what they're voting for. And so I really appreciate that. A couple of real quick housekeeping things besides the temperature in here. Emergency exits are all of the doors that you can see. Restrooms are back there or down there. And is there anything else that I need to cover? I think that you guys can handle that. If there's anyone here that is in the audience that is running for any of the other offices, nominations and election, Linda Bradley is back there for NNE, and she will be elected, I assure you.
I voted.
Because if she votes, she's elected. That's right. There are more openings than people running. So, anyone for architectural control? I don't think so. All right. Okay. We are okay. This as with the last one, we are putting this up on YouTube. We are unable to live stream from down here in the cave. I'm sorry, the multi-purpose room. And so I'll, as soon as I can get it processed tonight, tomorrow, whenever my computer lets me, I'll get it put up on YouTube. But people will be able to go to SuttonValley.com, click on the link to our YouTube page, and it'll go from there. My name's Eric Trower. I am on the board, Sutton Valley's Vice President and the Chair of Communications. And again, welcome to all of you. Thank you for stepping up. And now I'd like to give this to Tara DeVoe and Judy White, who have been responsible for this entire production. And I'm just the lemming that tries to set up chairs and stuff. So thank you.
All right, thanks. The other thing is we ask that you turn off your cell phones so that they're on silent, and so that we don't disturb the candidates. And approximately about an hour in, we'll take a 5-minute break. And so if you have any questions, feel free to go in and out. The green question box is out here. The cards are out here. There's pens out here. So if you have any questions, drop them in that it is anonymous, and we will be asking as many of those as we can at the end, time permitting. We are trying to be done by 9 o'clock, and we really have a jam-packed schedule, so we'll move along quickly. We've already given the candidates applause, and I know you have people you're really cheering for, but we're really asking that we're just going to hold the applause to the end so we can get through all the questions and just move from one to the other, which might seem kind of dry, but it just keeps us moving. So we are going to do different things. We have questions that all 5 candidates are going to answer, and we'll start with a different person each time to go first. And then we also, in our cute little vase here, we have 10 questions in there, and we will go through those questions 4 different times throughout the whole presentation or forum. And so they'll each get 4 of those 10 questions along the way. Okay? So.
I want to ask about the seats up front.
Oh yeah, there's 2 seats up here if anybody wants seats. Just get front.
2-hour
You
event.
get
They want to
front
sit
row. Okay, we asked the candidates to research Sudden Valley's Articles of Incorporation, bylaws, covenants, rules, and restrictions, or other governing documents, as well as federal, state, county, and watershed laws and regulations in order to provide answers that demonstrate both their understanding of restrictions that may affect decisions or changes and how they would accomplish changes, improvements within those constraints. So on that, we are going to start with our 2-minute introductions from each of the candidates. And for now, I'm going to start on the right side and move down the row. So Josh Bowens, we're going to start with you. And we have 2 minutes each.
Is this on? Is this on? My name's Joshua Bowens. This is very intimate and the weirdest job interview I've ever had. But I am a resident of Sudden Valley for a year and a couple months. My family and I moved here from Florida. We traveled all the way across the country to our dream home here. I have a wife who makes soap and candles, and a kid who does, my son who does Taekwondo, and my daughter who's into makeup. And I went to school in South Florida. I have a bachelor's of science and design, and I currently work for a award-winning advertising agency in Orlando. I work remotely from home here. We work on a variety of clients like Walt Disney World Parks and Resorts, and just today I was wrapping up something for the American Heart Association. Previously, I worked at an education company where I oversaw 12 designers, and we worked on online learning platforms for higher education. I am running for board because I really care about this community, and I feel that my creative problem-solving skills and my experience in marketing and design can help us. And I'm so nervous holding a mic right now. It's kind of weird. But yeah, thanks.
Hi, I'm Steffi Jones. I moved here in 2016. I am a mom, a grandma, a wife, and a nurse. I teach patients how to do dialysis at home. So there's quite a bit that goes along with that. I do case management as well, and I won't bore you or scare you with the details. But I am here because I started volunteering, and I just really, really, really like this community, and I wanted things to come together a little more, and I'd like to ease that transition into happening. And this is weird. It feels like we're really intimate too. So anyway, I'm going to close with that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Josh Luttrell. I've lived in Sun Valley for 15 years. The reason I'm running for the board is because I've been here through the ups and the downs, and I feel like this is a really critical time for the Valley and the association, and I felt like I have a lot to offer. I have a degree in operations management from here in Western. I'm the area manager for a DoD contractor that specializes in fluid processing for naval ships and submarines. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Borchert. My family and I moved here about 5 years ago. My husband and my 3 kids. I'm currently a stay-at-home mom, but prior to that, I worked in finance for about 10 years. I have a bachelor's in finance, and during my career, I spent quite a bit of that time doing budgeting and forecasting and cost-saving measures and things like that. Shortly after moving to Sudden Valley, I started becoming involved in various committees. I served on the long-range planning with Gail, I see out there, and got to know people and got to know more about Sudden Valley. From there, I joined the ACC. I was elected for a term of that. I served with the Sudden Valley Strong group that brought the recreation special assessment together. And I'm also on the Parks and Trails Committee currently, and also on the Finance Committee. And so seeking a board position just kind of seemed like the next step in this. I've learned a lot along the way. I've met a lot of people, and it just kind of made sense to continue what I've been doing. I hope to be able to bring my understanding of budgeting and Sudden Valley finances in particular, and to help with that. And I'm here for the long haul. This is hopefully our forever home, and so I want to really find long-term solutions that can work for everyone. Thank you.
All right. My name is Andrew Tischletter. I moved to Bellingham about 10 years ago from Minnesota. Me and my now wife moved out here together. We moved to Sudden Valley about 3 years ago now with my son who was just born, and we recently just added another one to our family about a month ago. My career is I'm a civil engineer, bachelor's degree in engineering. I help manage major road and drainage capital projects. We take projects all the way from inception to construction, project closeout, dealing with multi-million-dollar projects, help implement an entire capital program for the county, and I've also spent time working for the Washington Conservation Corps doing environmental restoration work and some trail building work and various things of that nature. I decided to run for the board because we moved to Sudden Valley, bought our dream home here, and would really like to stay. And our growing family was feeling the push from the dues increases that we've seen so far, and we'd just like to look for ways to help save some costs and hopefully help keep some more people here, and hopefully, keep our dues from jumping majorly again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. So moving on, we emailed them a question over a week ago to do some research, and I'm going to read the question to you guys. It is long, sorry. But it is, Sudden Valley currently has a special assessment that funds our trails, parks, rec center, pool, and dog parks. The estimated cost to care for and run these amenities under the special assessments are as follows. In 2019, the cost had been $350,755. In 2020, the expected cost is $393,968 with a $25,000 loss. In 2021, the expected cost is $399,332. In 2022, the expected cost is $409,141. And in 2023, it goes down because it's only good through June 1st when the special assessment is over, and that's $228,965. The board is charged with funding amenities, and since we are an amenities community, we can't simply just shut them all down. For the October 9th forum, which is this one, please develop a plan of action that, if elected to the board, you would recommend. What are your ideas regarding how to fund these amenities, even though some members of the community expect all amenities to break even? We're going to start on the other end.
All right, so I'd like to start with the fact that this special assessment, for starters, I think was just a Band-Aid solution. It was not a long-term solution. Funding operations through a special assessment, as you all know, after the 5 years are up, the money goes away. Therefore, the department that is being funded by the special assessment no longer has the funding it needed. So personally, I think, the special assessment, while it has accomplished a lot of good things and the community did vote for it, I do think that a long-term solution, if we were to propose something at the AGM, would have been a better solution, and we could have maybe come up with some sort of Band-Aid solution to fund the pools and everything like that for the 1 year after when the YMCA left us. Some of the ways, essentially the way I read the question is asking how do we expect to fund these funds after the 5 years are up. As everyone knows, from last year to this year, our dues went up 47%. The operations contribution in that 47% increase went up $8.05. If you're unaware, all of our dues get allocated to essentially 3 different accounts and operations: a roads reserve and a capital reserve. There's also a small amount going into a mailbox reserve. Obviously, that was a pretty large increase. One of the biggest maybe that Sudden Valley has seen. So I do believe that with some of that increase, we should be able to fund some of these amenities, as well as looking at efficiencies in our current budget. When I go through and look at the 2018 financial statements for the end of the year, it seems apparent to me that we are pretty conservative with our revenue projections, and we tend to bring in more revenue per department than what we project. But we are spending more than our expense budgets in most departments. I totaled up around $141,000 potentially of net. If you take away the extra revenue we bring in and then take the excess expenses that we spent over our budget projections for expenses, we come up with a pretty significant amount of money. There's also quite a bit of money coming out of UDR every year. 2016, we spent almost $120,000. 2017, almost $182,000. 2018, almost $220,000. And so far in 2019, almost $168,000.
Time, please.
So I agree with AJ that long-term, the solution was not to keep it in a special assessment. There were some particular circumstances around how and when that came about that it was proposed that way, and the community voted for it. And the plan all along was to make sure it was funded for the 60 months and then be able to reassess where we're at. Some of the usage statistics right now are we have issued 2,400 access cards, which is almost 1 card per household. I realize it's not exactly 1 per actual household, but that's about the average. The pool usage is about 3,000 members per month during the summer, and the gym is around 600. So based on that, I think that it's important that we keep it going. Our articles of incorporation do state that our dues are for recreation, and so I think it makes sense when this is finished to roll it into dues. A lot of the feedback we heard when proposing this was that people felt like if they were going to pay some money for an amenity, they wanted to be able to go ahead and use it without having to pay additional. And that was the thought at the time. If that continues, I think it makes even more sense to roll it into dues and keep it as a free amenity for the public, or for the membership. That isn't necessarily the only way to do it. And as a member of the board, I would be willing to hear other ideas and ways that we could make that work. But at the time when this was proposed, that was the sentiment from many of the community members, that if they felt if they were paying some into it, they wanted to be able to go ahead and use the pool, which they weren't able to do when the YMCA was running it. I work with our recreation manager a lot. I'm on the Parks and Trails committee, as I said, and I know that she is extremely budget conscious and looking for ways all the time to make things run more efficiently. This year, I think we added an additional 4 or 5 hours of open pool time for lap swim that hadn't been in the past. So I know she's always looking for ways to make it more friendly for the membership to be able to get better use, better access to it, and also looking for ways to be more efficient or to cut costs. She's really open to ideas. I send her some all the time. Sometimes she tells me I don't know what I'm talking about and that's not going to work, but other times she's really willing to look into stuff. And so I think we have a good plan going forward, and I would hope to be able to roll this into the budget, the regular budget, and keep it going for the long term.
I think that we need to eventually roll it into the budget as well. This is a residential amenities-based community. Parks and trails do not generate revenue. We have to pay and subsidize those funds. There's no way for our amenities to break even. They do not generate any income. So I think that there's many ways we can look to cut costs and help with that, but eventually we will need to look for a way to subsidize that through rolling it into the dues. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we all agree that we could look at costs, roll that into the dues. I agree with AJ that that's how that should have been done to begin with. I voted for the measure because I was new here and I didn't do any digging into that. I was, didn't get involved at that point. And I love the fact that it's there. So, and I think that we did a great thing for the community by offering that. It would be good to be more efficient, stay on budget, and I'm not knocking the recreational manager because I think she's done some great things. But it's hard for me to really assess because the financials are only posted through 5/31, but the monies aren't allocated to each department. So maybe going forward, we could have a plan where we knew how much we were going to spend monthly on parks, which portion would go there, to trail upkeep, how much we see for revenue isn't very much. We get rentals, whatever, so I agree with that. But just setting a limit and a budget there would help. We wouldn't go over budget. I don't know how you can stay in a budget if you don't know how much you can spend on a project. Some of those parks will be less than others, of course, and it would be an average. So, there is one thing. I would also utilize the community experience we have. We have volunteers here that are very adept at budgets and accounting, and they volunteered at that time. They'll still volunteer, so just using the experts we have in the community would be great. And I think that they'll be able to help us a lot with that. Let me see the other parts. Yes, and the articles do say that we fund recreation, but it doesn't say which ones we have to have. So if the community ever wanted to get rid of that, that's something the community, the people have to decide on. I think that the 7% limit on the dues is generous enough to make all of that happen. So that's it. Thank you.
Are you ready?
I'll start when you start.
All right. So as these guys have said, the last dues increase of 47% on developed lots, and I believe it's 60% on vacant lots. I firmly believe that there is enough money there to allocate to these amenities. I know they have to be rolled into operations now, but I think one thing that we need to do is we really need to empower staff to look for more creative ways to find efficiencies and to cut out things that we don't really need. One thing that I would like to address is there's something floating around that a couple of us don't want the amenities. And I actually use the trails all the time. We live over on Stable Lane and we have Little Strawberry Trail. And, it's absolutely beautiful. You go down there after the rain and then there's little waterfall and stuff like that. And, if we can get our ducks in a row with the finances and we, we fund these amenities, I see it going beyond that. Like, my thing's marketing, and I would like to see Parks and Trails and Communications work up a plan where they're creating, videos and maybe little pamphlets on some of these amenities that we have, like the parks and the trails, and kind of get that experience out to the community. Because, I know a lot of people, they know we have trails, but they don't know, like, hey, is this trail, is this good for me? I can only walk so far, or what kind of incline does this trail have? And, I can see Sudden Valley pushing that kind of stuff out to the community and really bringing that experience home. And I think that's something that we miss, and it's something that we can really look into. And, the more people that you get out on the trails, the less upkeep you're going to have on it. You're going to have all the traction that you need on it. And obviously there's going to be some overgrowth that has to be trimmed. And sometimes we'll have to replace some boards on the bridges and some gravel and stuff like that. But, I'm going off on a tangent about trails. I love trails. But yeah, I just think that we need to find some creative ways to look into cutting some things that we don't need. If, gravel is going to cost something, if it's going to be more expensive one place, we need to get more bids. I'm sure they look at other options, but if we're looking at 3 bids, maybe we need to look at 5 and just kind of really fine tune some of these things. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the question, and this one is for everybody. And Karen, we're going to start with you. You will have 2 minutes to answer this question. In what ways have you demonstrated that you are interested in and able to work with people with whom you disagree?
Okay. I guess this brings me back to my ACC experience. I really loved serving on that committee, actually, and we had to vote and make decisions, every single time, and those were some pretty heated conversations, some of them over fences and colors of houses and whatever. It is not hard to get something approved. I don't want to scare anyone away from that, but, we were tasked with this idea of, lots here are so very different, and we have these rules that you have to follow, and so finding the right balance between these different things, and there were a lot of heated discussions in some of those meetings, but I really respected every single one of those committee members. And after the fact, we could walk out and we could, just have a conversation in the parking lot or whatever. And I still consider myself to be friends with some of those people. And so, I think we can disagree, and that's fine. Everyone doesn't have to think the same, but taking interest in what their perspective is, and then being able to understand that and empathize with that, and still at the end of the day, be friends. And I think on ACC we did that. I think we tried to be fair and consistent and stick with the rules, and also understand, people's individual, homeowners' individual needs and concerns when they came in. And so it was a really great experience, and challenging, and thanks.
Can you repeat the question, please?
In what ways have you demonstrated that you are interested in and able to work with people with whom you disagree?
Just not letting your temper go has been the biggest challenge for myself, and it's hard to not take things personally when we all have a personal stake in the valley and with what we're doing, and being able to just put that emotion aside and have the debate and do your research and run your numbers and look at what's good for the valley as a whole and not just yourself has really helped me with those discussions and disagreements, and being able to just respect one another. And when you walk out and you're done having those conversations, that you can just shake each other's hands and move forward and keep working together for the betterment of the community as a whole and not just ourselves.
Is this how we're going?
Yep. Just right down the road. Very easy tonight.
No Robert's rules right now.
Okay. Okay, so in my line of work, I don't get to choose who I work with. I provide care to everyone, and that just isn't an option. I've worked with people in the past that we have not gotten along, but you would not know because profession dictates that patient comes first. You care for those people. Let's see. I have personal experience with, disagreeing about our common politics here in the Valley, and I've had people personally attack me and sat down at a table to talk about it instead of carrying on the argument. I would say that getting face to face is very important and realizing the intent of that other person. And now my family will tell you, oh, you can't sit and do that, but it really, really helps. I would encourage anyone who's having a conflict just to think about where that person is coming from. What are they carrying around? What's motivating that? 9 times out of 10, arguments are based out of a motivation of fear. So just getting face to face and talking with people and really understanding where they're coming from and knowing that you can have a conversation and you don't have to change their mind. But I would much rather sit down at a table to somebody who is, who has hurt my feelings or been damaging to my reputation and walk away with a mutual understanding than argue. It doesn't get you anywhere. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Can you repeat that question again?
In what ways have you demonstrated that you are interested in and able to work with people with whom you disagree?
Okay. I knew the question. It just sounded weird because it makes it sound like you disagree with this person all the time, and that would be really difficult. I work with creatives, and creatives are the most sensitive people on the planet. We have an objective to fulfill something for a client, and in between fulfilling something for a client, we got to work together, and people get their feelings hurt on how something looks or how something performs or what the writing's like. And then you get to a point where you send it to a client and the client's like, I don't like this, and you're like, you poured your heart and soul into this, and that's a whole other objective. So it's very tough, but every day I have to deal with that, and I have no problem with it. I haven't really been in the best agreement, I don't even know the word, but agreement with the current board and admin on everything, but I'm going to use poor Mr. Akla back there. I wanted to try to do something, and he was a good proponent for replacing the entrance signs for the gates, and we just, together with Scott back there, we put up the Gate 5 sign. And, that's why I say I don't disagree with these people all the time, but sometimes there's instances. So, I don't know. I think having so many different opinions is really good because usually you'll come up with a really good solution through some good discussion.
So in my line of work, we have a lot of peer review on our projects, and we deal with gathering as much public input on our projects as possible. We take a project from inception, and as a staff, we sit and look at what projects are most important in our eyes as engineers. And we weigh that with projects that the public thinks are important, weigh that with projects that the council may think is important. It's not always agreed upon that which projects we should be spending this amount of money on, or which projects are more important than others, which one should get done first. But we have these discussions, everyone gives their input, and we come up with the best solution by gathering as much input as possible. If everyone's thinking the same, then most people probably aren't thinking, is a statement that comes to mind. Even moving into the design of projects, if we have consultants helping us with the design, or if we're doing the design in-house, you know, there's lots of ways you can design various projects. For instance, if you're doing an intersection project and you're looking at, you know, should we replace this, you know, signalized intersection with an upgraded signalized intersection, or should we put a roundabout in? Things like that. You know, the public has a lot of input on that stuff, and they may not necessarily agree with the recommendations that staff are proposing, and you know, we have to give them the facts on what we think and why we've made these decisions. And you know, there's not always agreement on the way you move forward, and a lot of times you have to compromise.
Okay, thank you. Our next section is going to be, we're going to draw questions from the base, so they'll each have a different question, and then we'll go through twice. So Judy will hand me questions, and Josh, in the trail, we're starting with you. Okay, Josh, do you think that our HOA is under or overstaffed, or that our staff is under or overpaid? What, if anything, would you change with regard to our HOA staffing, and why?
As of right now, I believe our HOA staff is understaffed. I know maintenance is hurting right now. But before we just go out and start hiring people and going through that process, you definitely want to take a step back and look at the larger picture. See, maybe you can move resources from one department to the other. I don't think they're overpaid. I think for what they do and how much they do, they're probably underpaid. But you know, there's a lot that goes on around here. It's not just the gals at the admin office, it's the rec center, it's our maintenance, it's our golf staff. Everyone's really pulling through. We have 3,300 lots out here, and there's lots of rules and regulations we all need to follow, safety, and you know, we need them out here to make sure we're squared away with, you know, the federal government, you know, the state, any other regulations that we need to be in compliance with.
Okay, the golf course. Golf brings in revenue each year, but currently does not break even. Operational costs for our golf course are about $2.18 per household per month, and they're down from $2.55 per household from last year. Additionally, it costs money every year to maintain and or improve the property that the golf course is on, since the land is in the watershed. So, the question, what do you think is best for the community as a whole, and how would you suggest as a community we move forward with the golf course?
Okay, well, this is interesting because at the town hall, I did say I did not claim to be a golf course business expert. So there was a couple things that struck me as odd. Maybe I think that the best thing to move forward would be to have a community task force. We need some people who golf, and we need some people who are business savvy, who have their own businesses, those type of things, and look at how would we structure this, because it seems funny to me, and you know, this is just at first look here. But if it's $2.18, let's just say it's $80,000 that we subsidize golf for the year. That's just a number, everyone. But if we have $80,000 and they only use $40,000 of that, they have the other $40,000. So maybe there could be a different structure for golf, is all I'm saying there. And then there was a question, there's a lot of question over the second Golf Pro, things like that. So I think that just doing a deep dive and looking at efficiency and how we can live symbiotically, because I really don't think that most of the community wants to get rid of the golf course. I think that that's something that's shouted out in frustration, honestly. So I would definitely just look into that, see how we could structure that a little bit differently. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Josh Bowens. The association owns many acres of common area, grass, shrubs, trees, flowers, entry signs, and courts. Do you believe the common areas have been well maintained? If yes, what has been done well? If not, what would you change and how would you fund it?
So I think that's, you know, the areas are different. I think Gate 5 really needs some maintenance help. I know we're understaffed on maintenance. We have Bruce and is it Brian, I believe. You know, we need more maintenance people, and it varies different from each gate. You know, the lower gates, I think because there's not a lot of trees, it's a little easier for property owners to maintain some of those areas. Up in the higher gates, it gets really difficult, and I think we need more maintenance staff, and we need more funds diverted to maintenance in order to, you know, get some of these areas cleaned up. And yeah, I definitely think that, you know, it's different from each gate, and then I really think Gate 5 really needs a little bit of TLC, and I would love to see maintenance up there doing some of that work.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew. Are you satisfied with the current state of our HOA security as it currently contracted? For example, one officer on shift per day for 8 hours, limited ability to enforce Sudden Valley rules such as speeding. If you are satisfied, why? If you are not satisfied, why? If not, would you support reverting back to an in-house model with additional officers, training, requirements, and equipment?
That's a good question. So I would have to say that I am not satisfied with the security services that we currently have. As of right now, the professional security services contract for 2018 was $186,000. We have an additional $300,000 every 7 to 10 years to cover security equipment in our capital reserve fund. And we also spend another $12,000 a year on repair and maintenance of these various pieces of equipment that we have. You stated that we have security services on hand Monday through Friday from 9 to 5.
There's one person on an 8-hour shift, but it's 24 hours.
Okay, so 24 hours. You know, what I would like to look into is not hiring in-house staff and taking on more equipment to here. And maybe we can propose something to the county. $186,000 seems like more than enough money to fund an entire deputy dedicated to Sudden Valley. I think that deputy actually has jurisdiction to do stuff here and has the ability to help us. They could be staffed Monday through Friday, and then for the off times that they're here, we still have 911, just like every other neighborhood that is a part of Whatcom County Sheriff's jurisdiction. So, you know, based on the amount of cost that we already pay and the amount of cost it would take to add additional staff, additional equipment to that fleet, and the additional training needed, it just doesn't seem like it would be worth the money that we would spend when they still would have limited enforcement abilities, and, you know, you still have to call the sheriff for real emergencies.
Okay, Karen. Over the past year, sub-community members have attempted to rally the community to oppose the current board members' to oppose the current board due to the members dissatisfied with leadership. What is your opinion of the situation and the board's response to it? What style of leadership do you believe a BOD should practice? Please be specific.
That's a loaded question. You know, I think the board of directors is kind of a tough position. Like Eric said, you have a lot of responsibility and really no authority. And when it comes down to it, just like we're all individuals here with individual opinions and backgrounds, and so is the board. And they come together and they take the information that they have and the discussion that happens there, and they make the best decision possible. And so it's tough when those decisions, I think, are criticized, but I also think it's important for the board to lead by example and to not, not play into that as well. And so to be positive about their other board members. Going back to previous committee experience that I've had, I think, sometimes there are tough decisions, and some things are, they're political or they're very heated, and you do the best that you can and you make that decision, and then it becomes the committee's or the board's decision, and you go forward from there. I think there's more good to come from looking forward and how you can improve things looking forward, rather than looking back and finding everything to nitpick about how things should have or could have gone better. It's tough. I know it's tough in the nation, in this political climate, but always lead with kindness. We can disagree, and we can disagree well, and I think it's great to have differing opinions in a committee, in a board, in a community, but I think we can all be respectful of each other when we don't agree on those things, and just focus on moving forward and moving forward in a positive way.
Okay, thank you.
You're gonna do volleyball right now? No, you're gonna, I think you're gonna go to this and then do the more afterward, just to the time.
Oh, okay.
We have it right.
Yep, we can do that. Yeah, that works. All right, so. Okay, so this is an everyone question. Who's having to go first? There we go. Becky, I think you're nominated last to go first. All right.
Wait, you went first last time.
I don't remember. You can go if you'd like.
Yeah, let's have it. Bring it on.
So this is the question.
What is your view of the budget, dues assessments, and bylaw amendments as proposed on the current ballot? What budget items do you want to be different? And if increased, how would you fund your proposed changes? Please be specific.
That was kind of long. One more
Okay.
time, please.
What is your view of the budget, dues assessments, and bylaw amendments as proposed on the current ballot? What budget items do you want to be different? And if increased, how would you fund your proposed changes? Please be specific, and you have 3 minutes.
I think it's great that the Valley came out and had the highest turnout for votes for the past SGM. I am concerned about that, though, having the cap. There's so many things that we are lacking right now, but that's what the Valley spoke, the people spoke, and so we'll just need to work within those constraints. As far as the budget.
Budget, dues assessments, and bylaw amendments.
So I think for right now, we've had a lot of changes the past couple of years with our dues. I think it'd be smart to hunker down and let everything kind of play out with as far as our increases thus far, see what areas are going to be costing. I know trees right now are a big issue out in the Valley. That's very costly. So, I think that there's a bunch of things like that sitting out there, and the board needs to take a step back and reassess the budgets for each of those things, and just kind of see where we land with all the changes that we faced recently.
letting me sink in.
You're welcome.
Do you need me to repeat it?
No, that's okay. I'll go ahead. So, with the bylaws, the recent bylaw, I support the 7% limit, and that is, like everyone is saying, the community did speak very loudly and very clear. I helped support the community through that petition drive, and I think that 7% is generous. I think that we'll be able to do the things that we need to do. Let's see, the things I would like to see more money is spent on are, first off, safety. Yes, trees are a huge issue, and we're coming into the windstorm season. Roads are very important. I would like to see roads be a main priority. I would love to start from the ground level up with things. I think that everyone can appreciate roads and tree mitigation being done. And I feel that the work being done on the marina is very important as well. That's our drinking water. We really need to be good stewards and take care of that. The way I would fund these things, trees, we can qualify for a grant to help with Firewise. Firewise committee has done that before, I believe, and I think it was around $35,000. So that's pretty significant. Roads, I would like to see, just that needs to be a priority. It has to be. It can't be where we're driving over cracked roads and potholes. And I'm just really ashamed at what's happening in Gate 28 for those people. I mean, we really need to take care of all of our roads. And I know that Gate 5 feels a little neglected too. So that's really important. And let me see, I think that's it for the question, the long question.
Can I have it one more time?
What is your view of the budget, dues assessments, and bylaw amendments as proposed on the current ballot? What budget items do you want to be different? And if increased, how would you fund your proposed changes? Please be specific.
Okay. So my view on the budget is kind of a mishmash. I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't come to an agreement on the 7% limitation at the last board meeting. That was a really weird board meeting. I felt like I was watching one of those magic tricks where people have the cups and they're just like going all over the place and you got to follow the one with the ball. That's what it seriously felt like. But I think having a limitation is great because then it gives us something to work towards. If not, we're setting budgets that we can go over, and why are we going over? We didn't have an actual limitation on what we can use. Hazardous trees seems like a really hot topic. I think that's a great thing. I mean, I would like to see even more bids on bidding out that work and trying to find maybe like some contracts to, get some of that work done cheaper, but I definitely think it needs to be done. Safety's a big deal. Speaking of safety, I know you talked about this, Karen, at the last meeting, but that Treehouse Park, I took my kid down there to see that, and there's stuff that like you can trip over, and there's a lot of hazards there, and I think we need to take care of stuff like that. As far as funding these projects and new goals, there has to be enough with these last increases. I think we're looking at $2 million or so a year from the dues, and we have to work within those means. We just can't keep raising dues on people. People are tapped out, and we need to look for creative ways to solve these problems. And I wanted to bring this up because Steffi mentioned the watershed. It really has nothing to do with anything, but I was thinking about it today. But we're getting close to snow season, and I know the association sells de-icer and stuff like that, and I want to make sure that we are using stuff that's appropriate for our watershed, that doesn't go that runs off and causes us issues in the future, and hopefully they can look into something like that.
All right, so I have to agree with Josh that I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't come to a compromise on the budget being proposed this year. I felt like that we gave enough notice for there to at least be a preliminary look at reducing our 13 or 14% increased budget that's being proposed this year down to 7%, to adhere to the bylaws that were just recently changed at the SGM. As far as the budget goes, I think, you know, there's a lot of efficiencies that we need to try to look for. You know, like Josh said, we need to get creative with our solutions at this point. You know, we hear staff tell us about all this deferred maintenance and things that need to happen. And, you know, at the end of the day, while this deferred maintenance has occurred over a very long period of time, it's not realistically feasible to make it all up just like that. We need to assess things on a really deep level and try and look for efficiencies, tap into the potential that we have in this community. We have so many contractors that live out here that do various different things, from painting to actual carpentry construction to concrete, to all these different things. We need to tap into that and try and get people to volunteer to help us. You know, maybe if we have to paint a building, maybe we can get a painter to come in and he can lead a group of volunteers to help us paint the outside of a building that needs it. And we can save costs on labor that way, help reduce the burden of capital costs in our budget. As far as the bylaw amendments that are proposed on this AGM ballot, I'm thinking, you know, at this point, I'm going to vote no on those bylaw amendments. WICOA is something that I feel like took a large voice away from part of this community, and I would not like to align ourselves with that law. So that's where I stand.
So I actually went into this budget season thinking, you know, just all we need is to fund the wage increase and really nothing else. But I did go into it with an open mind, and I sat through 2 evenings of budget presentations by each of the managers, and I gained a much greater understanding of where we are with our capital and our roads reserves. And so as a finance committee, we did approve something similar to the budget that was approved, and I do support it. I don't want to see us get further in the hole with our reserves. I don't want to continue in this place that we're in for the next 20 years wondering where those funds are going to come from. I think that the most financially stable position is to have some reserves set aside for those things. I do think the most important things that we should focus on are safety and maintenance. We did approve an additional maintenance staff this year, and that was for 2 things. One, to accomplish more maintenance, but also because some of the things that needed to be done required 2 people on hand to do it. And so things were getting deferred just because they didn't have another person, you know, to pull off another project. And so having the 2 together seemed to make things would be able to run a lot more smoothly. I support funding our capital reserves, and I think that this can all be done within this new bylaw. I don't see any reason why we have to be at odds with that. We can work within those guidelines, and we can, you know, still look for ways to be efficient and still look for ways, you know, we go through and we redo our reserve study every year. We can definitely take a good hard look at that. We have some things in there where we need to get better cost estimates, and we can definitely do that and look for ways in the future that we don't have to continue to have these bigger jumps. But last year it was, you know, we were kind of told, no, I didn't even realize it either, but it was kind of a 2-step process to get us to where they thought we needed to be, kind of a true up. And so we're kind of seeing the results of that right now. But I think that we can all kind of move forward within this new guideline that we've been given, and still be able to accomplish the things and fund the amenities that people are enjoying.
Okay, thank you. Perfect timing. We are going to take a 5-minute break right now. We will be back at 8:05. There's water, there's coffee out here, the question box is out here, the restrooms are out here, and we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Oh, that's my dad.
Okay, here we go. This is for everybody, and it's a 2-minute question. So now, Steffi, you get to begin this.
It's on now.
You ready? Okay. How do you view the role of the board in terms of governance versus operations?
Okay. So, okay, so how do I view the role of the board in governance versus operation? Okay, so the board members should be governing according to our bylaws and our articles of incorporation. So I guess, could you be more specific about versus operations?
Well, that would give away the answer.
Oh, because I'm thinking very broadly.
It's very broadly seen, kind of what you know from the governance of the board versus operations of the board, and where do they land in both those?
Versus operations of the board, not operations of the community day to day.
All of operations of Sudden Valley.
Oh, okay. Well, we hired a general manager, everyone, Joe Akla, and he is, no, don't you dare. And he is doing a great job and is very pleasant. And I think that the general manager should be fulfilling his role to capacity without the board giving day-to-day pieces of information, unless there is something that needs some feedback or, I don't know, maybe a little overview. I would say that you would work very closely with the general manager to work on that. But I think that he's doing a great job, actually. So, not really sure if I understood the whole question, too, for the record. Thank you.
Can I get it again?
How do you view the role of the board in terms of governance versus operations? What's the role of the board?
So I see the role of the board taking in considerations of the community and working for the community as much as they possibly can as far as the governance goes. Obviously working within the bylaws and all the rules that the board has to work within. As far as operations go, I see the board, looking at things in ways that make sense for the community at large, and working with the committees and with staff to make sure that the board is making the most common, the best recommendations and giving the best answers to to staff and to the committees to be successful, and still keeping community at the forefront of all of that.
So I see the role of the board of directors very similar to the way our county council works. Basically their job is to govern. The board is not tasked with being the experts of the day-to-day operations. As you can see from the current board and from all of us candidates up here, we all have different backgrounds, we all have different skill sets, we all bring different positive qualities to the board. We can't be expected to know everything about everything. It's unrealistic, and that is why we hire staff. The role of staff, just like with the county council and the staff that they hire in their public works department and their parks department and stuff like that, they hire the experts to tell them the things that they need to do it. And it is the role of the board, just like it's the role of the council, to establish the budgets and the guidelines of which the staff needs to work within. You know, just like in the county council, you know, staff may say, you know, we need to do this and this needs to happen, but the money may not be there to do all that. And, you know, that sometimes tough decisions have to be made. Sometimes you can move money around or, you know, come up with creative solutions to try to get projects done that weren't maybe on your budget that popped up, you know, surprisingly. But, you know, the general gist of what I see is it is the role of the board to govern and to listen to the community, like Josh said, and to take the community's wishes as their constituents, just like the county council would, and advocate for those people that they represent and what their wishes and desires are, and bring those to staff so that staff as experts can implement those things the way that the community wants.
So I see the role, like everyone here has said, the role of the board is really for governance. There's maybe 1-2-ish operations tasks that the board would do, and one would be hiring the GM, and the other is we set the budget and then, you know, hand it over to our very competent GM that then works within that and with his staff. I believe that, you know, we have various committees, and those are out there to really get community input and community feedback on things that need to be addressed, things that need to be changed, things that can be done better. And through those committees, the committees can take things to the board to recommend, and then the board hears those, decides on what they should do. Sometimes it has to go through a couple of different committees in order to make it to the board. And then the board, if they approve it, they can recommend to the staff to then enact that thing. And I think it works best when there's kind of a little bit of, when the board empowers our staff and management to really let their expertise show, and to be able to propose solutions, and where we value innovation and stuff. I think the board can kind of set the culture for that, that really allows for that kind of innovation and expertise to show through of the staff, and that is how I think that the real innovation comes through.
Well, I'll agree with everyone here. It's in the CCNRs. The board is to govern. That's why they hire the general manager. He handles all the day-to-day operations, and the board sets the budgets, listens to its constituents, and listens to what the people want. And from that, they get a plan, and then give it to the general manager and the employees to run with that plan.
Okay, thank you. We are going to go back to drawing from the base.
We're going to go the opposite direction and start with Karen.
Shaking it up.
Okay.
Do you think you are capable of putting aside your personal feelings to take an action that is beneficial to the whole community, even if that action would offend a close friend or neighbor? How will you manage to make a hard decision when it goes against your supporters or when it is the unpopular vote?
Well, first of all, I think as a board member, you represent the whole community. I realize that the whole community has a lot of different opinions and experiences and comes through it, but I don't think that any board member just advocates for what their supporters were or a certain viewpoint. I try to always go into any kind of a decision with an open mind. And so I might have some preconceived ideas about how things should go, but there's also a lot of other capable people at the table that have their own experience and their own viewpoints. And so I think taking that into account is how you come to the best decision, is not holding yourself so tightly to a certain viewpoint going into a meeting that you're not willing to listen to other people's viewpoints, whether it's community members, other board members, committee members, staff members, whoever. I think the most important thing is going into it with an open mind. And I think when you do that, you can avoid hopefully offending others. But you have to make the best decision with the information that you have. And then I think you have to support whatever decision was made, whether that was what you chose or not, what you voted for or not, and then move on from there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Andrew, how do you feel about a board member sustaining from a vote? Should BOD members feel obligated to vote on all board issues rather than abstaining on matters that are uncomfortable to them?
I would have to say that, you know, if a vote makes you uncomfortable, that I don't really feel like that's a reason to abstain from it. If you have a conflict of interest with a vote for some reason, then, you know, I can understand abstaining. If you don't understand the vote that is taking place, and you can't convince the other board members to give you time to ask more questions, and if a vote gets pushed through, then maybe, you know, that's a worthy reason for abstaining from a vote. We certainly don't necessarily want a board member who doesn't know what they're voting for just to vote. Other than that, I think for the most part, yeah, you should vote. You were elected to the board of directors to make decisions. You know, you can't appease everybody with the decisions that you make, but you know, if you're listening to your constituents and, you know, and what the community is saying and the feedback that you're getting, then you should be able to make, you know, educated votes if you're doing the time to look at the research that staff's providing and balance that with the concerns of your constituents. So yeah, I think for the most part, other than a couple select reasons, that board members should vote on almost all votes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, ready? Would you rather be a coach or a team player, and why?
How long do I have until I start talking?
We start when you start.
All right, go ahead. I am a team player. I work well and collaborate with people. You know, if the time comes to coach, like I've held management positions, and you know, I'm good at mentoring people, but I work better. Hi, Brian. I work better in a group, and I love collaborating with people, and I think that's a thing that the board of directors has an opportunity to do that I feel like is missing here, is, as you know, getting more community input and collaborating with the community more. And I can see more collaboration between the committees as well. And so yeah, I think that the best ideas, you know, some people just have brilliant minds and they can sit alone in a room and they could come up with some amazing things. But I think the essence is when you have a group together and you guys start powwowing on ideas, you know, I call it riffing, but like, you know, someone would come up with something and then you riff off of that, and then all of a sudden you have this grand, you know, working idea that works for everyone, and keeping the community in mind with the board, working with the community. I think there's an endless opportunity to solve a lot of our issues out here. I don't know where that goes.
Okay. Hazardous trees can be dangerous to people and property, but are also expensive to remove. What are your views on our HOA spending the amount of money necessary to remove all of the trees on the HOA property that are certified to be at a high level of risk?
Do it. So I had a tree hit my roof on December 13th, and if we would have been in the kitchen, somebody would be dead. But luckily, we were in bed at 2 in the morning, as all good people should be. No. But so that's really important. That's scary. And one of the things that people said was, oh, trees, they're going to fall on your house out there in Sudden Valley. How ridiculous. But we do need to be spending the money on hazardous trees. And like I mentioned before, there is a grant we can apply for. We have a lot of, as Joshua has coined, creative ways to take care of this. And it's very important. Luckily, I have a loving and wonderful husband who busted his rear end for a week straight and fixed that. But for other people, it was hard to get contractors out there. There were several trees that fell and hit houses. We're trying to work on a project to help someone actually fix their roof. It still hasn't been fixed, trying to get that done before we go into winter. If any volunteers want to help, hit me up, please. But yeah, I'm all for safety. It's just, it's of the utmost importance. So I just, for it, do it.
Okay, Josh, do you think that funding for both emergency preparedness and emergency response in Sudden Valley is important? For example, providing funds for a partnership with the Whatcom County Department of Emergency Management. And if not, how do you think that our HOA should prepare for and respond to an emergency situation, for example, an earthquake?
I do think we need to budget and support that. I think it'd be great to work with the county, but when it's all said and done and we are hit with a natural disaster, we're out here on our own. There's only two roads that'll get us out of here. I guess 3 technically if you go Lake Louise, but we're on our own. And if it's a bad enough earthquake, we're out the lake. If the lake drains for some reason, we need to be prepared for that and be able to help each other as a community and, you know, tough it out and do what we can to build back up and be prepared for that. And through that, it's saving up for it, working with the committee to see what we need to do to prepare for that, and stay on top of that, because it's really crucial to make sure for safety and one another.
Okay, thank you. We have one more, kind of one more question that you're all going to answer. So, Josh, you get to start this one. Are you familiar with our bylaws? And are you aware that a board member can be removed for violating them? Do you think that you have been and continue to follow our rules and regulations? And are there any that you would like to change, and if so, why? Do I need to repeat it?
If you don't mind, real quick.
So, are you familiar with our bylaws? Are you aware that a board member can be removed for violating them? So those,
Yes.
okay. Do you think that you have been and can continue to follow our rules and regulations? And are there any you would like to change? And if so, why?
I am familiar, well, not with all of them, there are quite a few, but, you know, before I go out and cut a tree down or something like that, you know, there are rules and regulations for all that. I am aware that you can be removed for not following those. I believe I've been compliant. As of right now, there aren't any that I would change per se, but if it needs to be changed, then we take it to a vote and talk about it, discuss why and how we would change that, and move forward as a community in deciding that.
Thank you.
So yes, I'm aware of the bylaws. Same, I don't have them memorized, but I have referred to them several times. I'm aware that a board member can be removed, and I do believe I'm in compliance with all bylaws and rules and regulations. And I know how important it is to continue to follow them. As far as changing any, I would love to see us allow privacy fencing. You know, it came up a lot when I was on the ACC, and I'm not saying I would, you know, that this needs to happen, but we have moved from a community that was vacationers and only here sometimes to people that, you know, this is their space. They want a little bit of privacy. They want a little bit more safety. They want a little bit more security. And so I would love to see that maybe considered. I really lost my chance when I was on ACC. I probably could have proposed it then, but I didn't. As far as the bylaws, there are none that I necessarily want to see changed, but one thing that I have thought about as far as maybe not necessarily a cost savings, but being able to do things a little bit more efficiently is as we move into a more digital age, the views and how it has to be given to all the members is actually in one of our bylaws. And I think it might be worthwhile to look and see, you know, as we move to a more electronic age and fewer people wanting the print copy, is there a way to communicate better with our community than in print like we have been doing? So I think that would be something that would be worthwhile to look into.
Okay, thank you.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes. Are you familiar with our bylaws? And are you aware that a board member can be removed for violating them? Do you think that you have been and can continue to follow our rules and regulations? And are there any you would like to change, and if so, why?
I am familiar with the bylaws. I've referred to them a number of times. I don't think anybody has them memorized, but probably not a productive use of someone's time. I am aware that a board member can be removed. The rules for removal are stated in the bylaws. As far as changing any rules, or I don't have any major changes that I would propose at this time to the bylaws, but as far as rules and regulations go, you know, as far as the ACC committee goes, I think it's a, you know, I get the concept, like you want to, you know, you want the nicest neighborhood, you know, and everyone around you is, you know, spick and span and everything like this, but I just think that the ACC guidelines, most of that stuff is, you know, covered by the county. You know, places like Geneva and the Britain neighborhoods, those are large scale neighborhoods, albeit not one major development like Sudden Valley is, that don't have ACC regulations. You know, their houses aren't falling into decay. They're not telling their neighbors what they can and can't do on their own property. I think there's a lot of overlap with the ACC and the Whatcom County regulations that, you know, we can get rid of. You know, we just don't need that duplicity, you know, creating more bureaucracy that you have to get through to, you know, put new shingles on your roof or paint your house or any of that stuff. You know, I don't see this major problem with like hot pink houses popping up all over in neighborhoods that don't have ACC guidelines. You know, it's something you have to spend money to enforce, and if you don't enforce all that stuff, then it becomes selective.
Is this 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
You want it repeated?
No, I got this one. So yes, as with the rest of these guys, I don't know all the bylaws by heart. I understand that you can be removed, which would be unfortunate. And I'm pretty sure I have done everything within the bylaws. I'm a little upset with Karen right now because she totally took my answer. So I mentioned the views on Facebook because, you know, people were talking about that and like, why do we still get this? And I understand some people still want that and they don't read digital. Like I know Edward mentioned that. And, you know, there has to be a way where if that was a bylaw that I could change, I would advocate for changing that if the community was on board with that first. But, I can see a companion site being built for, online for the news for Sudden Valley that can be updated a lot more frequently with more, cultural items that can be of use. I know the Views has to be mailed with financials and stuff like that. So, but there's an opportunity there to, have some cultural impact and quicker news stories updates, more involvement with the community, photos, video, and it can also serve as a revenue source as well if we had the advertisements that were in the Views as display ads and digital ads on like a site like that. And at the same time, you can create a directory with a lot of the local businesses here, and people can pay to have their business in a directory, and they can have their logo if they want. There could be a different tier system. I know a little bit about this because we did it for a city down in Florida, and it was actually it was really successful. I think it generated around $60K a year, and you have this constant.
Time, please.
That was the first time.
This is your jam. That was his jam. Okay, so yes, yes, and yes. So I personally don't have any bylaws that I would change. I would be interested in what the community has to say. We actually did ask at a board meeting for the Views to not be in print. It would save some money, and we were shut down rather quickly. So I think the important thing as a board member would be to understand how many members of the community actually want that to happen, and to be open in order to listen to that and be willing to go forward, as well as other bylaws. Some of the buzz on social media, as I said earlier, it was easy to get a read on people from social media, was, the Views in print. Some people question the money we spend on security, like AJ had said, a sheriff would be good. And ACC guidelines are another thing that they talk about. So it would be good to poll the community and find out what is it that our community neighbors' needs are. Like, I know what my needs are, but I don't know what everyone collectively. So that's something that's really important, and to ask them that and give them the price tag, because when you're shopping, you always have a price tag, right? So is it valuable to you? That's my question. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to take the anonymous questions, and so this is volunteer basis. So we'll read the question, and if you would like to answer it, you may. If it's something you're passionate about, you can also pass. So the first question.
So we're all, like everyone, or just the one person?
Whoever wants to answer it. Hopefully.
It's a battle royale.
So don't feel pressure that you have to answer a single question, and we're going to stick with about a minute for each of these so we can get through them all and give you time for closing statements.
Have you read the agenda for tomorrow's board meeting? Do you support any item on the agenda in particular?
Anyone?
There you go.
I'll be the one brave enough to say that I have not read the agenda yet because I've been preparing for this. But I will go home this evening and look at it because I will be attending tomorrow.
Yeah, and I cruelly gave Mr. Luttrell a hard time for not reading it, but I didn't either. I was preparing for tonight, and we've also had a few upsets in our household we've been dealing with, so I've been triaging that. So I will be there tomorrow night. It is all the rage, you guys. Sometimes they have Snickers bars.
Okay. Tonight, many times, volunteer work to accomplish projects has been mentioned. In the past, that suggestion was met with frustration that dues should cover everything. What amount of volunteer work do you feel is appropriate?
I got this.
Wait. What work should be included in dues?
So ideally, all the work would be included in dues. And I understand, oh, what?
Wait. Now I got it. It says versus. What amount of volunteer work do you feel is appropriate versus what work should be included in dues?
Okay, still on the same page. Ideally, it would be everything, right? But unfortunately, we're in a situation where we do have to roll up our sleeves and help out. And when I first moved here and the dues went up, I thought the very same thing. Shouldn't we be getting everything done? But you know what? It's going to take some hard work, and I'm willing to do it. I've put my husband up to doing it. He's willingly helping. Willingly. So, I mean, I think that we just do what it takes as a community, and it really has forged some awesome relationships. I have met some great people, and it's fun, and it feels so good. It really, really fills your cup for longer than complaining. So, in an ideal world, everything would be covered, but you know, I'm willing to give 200%. So that's what I'm going to do. If anyone can give 10, I'll take it.
I also think I'm a little bit hesitant to cut costs out of our operations budget in with the idea that volunteers would do it. And that is just because I have volunteered on a lot of committees and people start out super strong and super excited and then not so much. And it also honestly takes quite a bit of planning and preparation in order to get some of these volunteer things done. And so I think it needs to be included in our operations budget. That said, Steffi is right. Getting out there, you know, working with your community members, whether it's sitting on a committee and discussing things, if that's more your style, or actually getting out there and doing some manual labor. All of those are very rewarding experiences to do with the committee. I will say that there is a trails committee. If anyone wants to get in touch with them, they go out, I think about once a week. They do cut back vegetation. They work with our Parks and Trails staff to get things done, and they're actually doing a fantastic job and, you know, really building some friendships doing that. So if anyone wants to get involved in that, give me a holler.
I agree with you. We shouldn't plan for it. I think we need a budget accordingly. However, though, it is great to take pride in your community and, you know, meet one another. And I think that's what really builds a strong bond. And I think that's what makes it easier for everyone to get on the same page and find what our common interests are and focus on that rather than all the negatives.
I brought up the volunteer stuff a couple of times tonight. I agree. I don't think we should be cutting funding from our operation budget because people are willing to volunteer. Those are the types of things I talked about when we talk about efficiencies in our budget. If we budget for this specific thing, you know, let's say painting a room or painting, you know, the outside of a building or something, you know, we have it in the budget, but if we can get the volunteer work to help us and we use the budget to buy the supplies and we can get the man hours for free, that's an efficiency in the budget that frees up more money for our staff to do more things then. You know, I think it's a no-brainer. Trails is a perfect example of something. I see zero reason why we should spend any, you know, staff time doing physical trail maintenance. You know, we can with the amount of trails we have, it seems like if we have enough traffic on them, we can, you know, do the maintenance we need with volunteer efforts. The WMBC up in Galbraith maintains 64 miles of trails pretty much exclusively through volunteer efforts. There is funding associated with that, obviously.
I'll take it.
Are you ready? Okay. I think these guys all said it perfectly, and you know, with all the volunteering that happens around here, I think that's another good opportunity to showcase the work that people do. I haven't seen a lot of that come through on the email blasts and stuff like that, but I think we need to get people out there taking pictures of these volunteers doing the work, and I think that can influence more people to get involved. And I think if the association asks more people will get involved. That's one of the key components of getting volunteers, is actually asking for it. But I think just taking a snapshot of some of the work that's done with these people and putting faces to a lot of this hard work would be perfect for our community and to help build pride. And there's so many opportunities to do something like that.
Okay, the next question that was in the box. We need more services for the elderly, handicapped, and ill. What are you going to do about that? We need more services for the elderly, handicapped, and ill. So what can the board do for you? What would you bring to the board to be able to help elderly? I know I'm kind of rephrasing this from
The question is a little vague on what type of services that you're looking for. Obviously, Whatcom County, City of Bellingham, our local municipality governments have a lot of services to provide that are of a greater scope than probably what our board of directors should be looking towards. But I think this piggybacks on the volunteer question pretty well. If there's winter storms and people who need to get to doctor's appointments and things like that, we could put together some sort of task force with a list of people who are willing and able and have the time to help other people, get groceries. I know that Steffi in the last windstorms was going into town for people who needed groceries. I've actually helped my neighbor who's right here shovel her entire driveway, and I actually shoveled our entire road out of our house up to the main road to get, so that people could get out.
Time, please.
I agree with Andrew, AJ. What are you about? Anyway, this seems something that I think could be really well addressed through volunteer efforts, and then if it needs to go up to a board level to get something approved, that would work. But sometimes board things are a little bit slow to get done, to work through all of the things. But I think there's like a Sudden Valley Moms Facebook page, and if people need, they're looking for birthday presents for their kid, something free donated, or they need childcare or all kinds of things. And so I think maybe kind of coming up with a community like that, if it doesn't already exist, to kind of help people, put them in touch with the right people, like Steffi was doing, just letting people know whether it's a one-time situation or an ongoing. I think putting people in touch. This community is amazing when it comes to stepping up and helping people out when they have needs, whether it's, like I said, a mom that needs childcare, someone just had a baby, someone had surgery, need to shovel someone out of their driveway. I have never been part of a community that was more willing to step up and serve their neighbors.
As a board member, I just think it shouldn't be something that's overlooked and not necessarily dipping into the budget, but can put point them in the right direction to get that assistance, whether it's through volunteering or some other people that can assist them and helping them with whatever their needs may be.
So services for the elderly, I think we could partner with Opportunity Council, maybe to make some of those things known. Actually, Bellingham has great services in general compared to other counties. I'm but lived in Snohomish County for quite some time, and so I'm really impressed with Bellingham. Shout out to Joe, who took someone to dialysis during the snowstorm. So I did talk with the emergency planning committee person, Mr. Walsh, and he and I discussed a task force or people who would be willing to volunteer to drive. Those type of things would be great. The Moms page and Sudden Valley Gives is great as well for that, but I think just partnering with Opportunity Council and letting people know that that's available, because then once I spoke to Joe, about getting that person to their appointment, life-saving treatment. He said that there was a plan and we could call security, things like that. So then just letting that facility know.
I think these guys summed it all up. Awesome. The only thing I have to add is just get to know your neighbors.
Okay, thank you. We have 10 minutes left. So unfortunately, we're going to go through and let them do their closing statements. And with your closing statements, we're going to ask you, is there anything that you were hoping that we would ask you tonight that you want to share that question and the answer to? So if you have a question that you were hoping we were going to answer, or we were going to ask, feel free to state the question and the answer, and then as well as give your closing statement. Okay.
2 minutes, 3 minutes.
You want to go 3? 2, 2.5, 3? Let's go 3.
What do you want?
What do you want? What do you want?
Minutes,
We can, you want 2 each or 3 each? We're kind of flexible here.
Go 3.
Go 3?
You don't have to use it all if you don't want.
Okay. Do I have a volunteer to go first, and then we'll just...
Yeah, 3.
3. Basically. Who's going first? Okay, then we'll go right down the table.
So I'd just like to start by saying thank you to everyone that showed up. Thank you to everyone that will watch this. I think Eric said it's not streaming this time, so everyone that watches this and takes the time, thank you. We all appreciate everyone's support in the community for this. One of the questions that's gotten brought up quite a bit is like hazard trees. I would like to see a much greater emphasis put on health, life, and safety things in the valley. It seems to me that, you know, we don't have this specific plan that's funded for hazard tree removal. There is a lot of wildfire concerns out there that Firewise over the years has brought up with us. I think we really need to look into these things and make sure that we're dealing with those things as a top priority over almost everything else. Wildfire things are a big concern. Let's not be complacent because this last summer we had a glorious, beautiful, smoke-free summer again. The last 3 years were not that, and we've watched fires increase in size. We've watched more and more fires creep over onto the west side. We are a community that could be the next Paradise, California. We don't want to be that. We need to maintain our common areas. We need to get rid of hazard tree removal. We need to get a healthy forest and a healthy ecosystem that is fire safe. We need to give people more resources on what they can do on their personal properties to protect their homes. What types of materials they should be using, where they can be planting things, what types of things they should be planting and where. All these things are very important, along with wildfire and hazard trees. Those are not necessarily the same thing. Hazard trees are a major concern for our houses. Wildfires are as well, but wildfires, a lot of it has to deal with the brush and everything and the density of trees that we have. I would like to see us focus on these life, health, safety things with a bit more vigor and put some actual money behind them. Don't just use the UDR fund to fund these things over and over again. Let's not look at cutting budgets for those types of things when staff says we need $60,000 for hazard tree removal. Let's go forward with $60,000 for hazard tree removal. That's someone's house, or could be dozens of people's homes. That's a lot more than $60,000 in value that could get destroyed. And then, along with life, health, and safety, we also need to worry about our watershed.
I didn't have any additional questions that I wanted to answer necessarily, but just a little bit of a clarification. Steffi, sorry, I'm going to call you. But she was talking about the financial statements for parks and trails and pools, and it is a little bit confusing because sometimes they show them separate. So there's one financial statement for parks and trails, there's one for pools, and then there's one for the community center. They each do list their own separate costs. And they also have the revenue associated with them. All of the special assessment revenue will go into the one that is for the community center. So you can see them separate, and you can also, sometimes they're rolled up and seen together. So you have to keep that in mind. Sometimes you have to add them all together, which is a little bit tricky. We had to do that during the budget and they weren't all together. But it's nice that we can see them separately. Also want to clarify that, you know, when I was talking about, I think it should be, once the special assessment is over, it would be rolled up into a dues increase. It wouldn't necessarily be an increase overall of what our payment was, just it would switch the classification of what it is. I want to kind of touch on what AJ was talking about. There was the start of a forest management plan. Last I heard, it was in the Parks and Trails Committee for a time, and we realized it was a little bit too broad to stay within there. And so the last I heard that was within LRPC, but I agree. We need to take care of our forest, and we need to think about that from a health and safety perspective, whether it's wildfires or it is hazard trees. I think right now we're able to remove anything rated an 8 and up in our hazard trees. I'm not completely sure what that scale is and at what point it would be satisfactory. I think probably going all the way down to 1 might not be the best cost-effective way, but if we could come down to maybe a 6 and fund those and be able to get rid of more of our hazard trees, that also helps with disease prevention and stuff in trees like that. And last, I'm just going to end with, there's so many comments from time to time of people want to know how to have their voice heard. And I think the best way, I'm always going to say this, the best way is to be part of a committee. If you can't join a committee, you can always come to the meetings. They're open. They're less formal than what a board meeting is. You know, we all have to follow Robert's rules, but they follow kind of a modified Robert's rules. And so there's a little bit more dialogue that you see happening between the community members. There's usually time for member comments and that. And there's able to be a little bit more question answer period that doesn't. And so I think that is an excellent way for people to get involved, to have their voices heard, and particularly, you know, join the committee, be part of the solutions. We do have a lot of people with great ideas out of here, and by joining those committees, you can roll those ideas and those suggestions up to the board, and then have things actually acted on.
My big push is for the amenities. I think the campground is a great lesson of what will happen if we do not take care of our amenities. That they let it run out, and we cannot have that back. We cannot invest in opening the campground back up and get the permitting for that. Once that permit goes out, we will not get it back. We're grandfathered in under, you know, many laws, you know, updates. And I think it's just crucial that we really focus on maintaining and bringing them back up, because that's really the heart of the valley. Without the amenities, we're just a big group of houses with a neighborhood. And so I just want to say that, I don't think our neighbors are one another. I don't think a lot of our ideologies are that different. I think we have a lot more in common than what we've been led to believe. And I think we're moving in the right direction. I think this is a great, exciting time for Sun Valley. We're really growing, and there's a lot of chatter going on, and a lot of people rolling up their sleeves and wanting to contribute. And I think that's great, and I think that's the right direction. And I definitely want to be a part of that, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I just wanted to be clear. I'm sorry, Karen. I think maybe I wasn't clear when I said that the budgeting wasn't there. It all goes into the recs. All of the essay goes into the recs, and I meant that if we didn't allocate any over to parks or trails, or it would be hard for her to stay within budget. That was my suggestion. So, thank you for saying that. I just wanted to say, I've been asked a question that they wanted asked was to answer. Working on the community and bridging the gap between people. And I think that can be done with transparency, really being open and talking about things and owning, owning our actions. Like sometimes we have to take an action that isn't favorable and just saying yes, and this is why we're doing it, and just letting the community know up front, basically. I think that that will help. So that was a question that was asked, and I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone that voted in September. Thank you to everyone that's voting in November. I really appreciate that. I'm pretty excited that 2,000 people came out to vote, and I'm hoping for 2,500. So tell everyone to vote. So I'm really excited about that. And feel free to reach out to me on social media or any platform. If you know someone that knows me, anything like that, walk up to me. I will chat with you about any of these issues. And I'm really just here to represent the community and the whole community, not just people who are supporting me right now, but everyone in general. And I also want to say this is a wonderful place. And my heart is just full at how many people have reached out to us and offered condolences and, offered to help us out through some things that we're going through, and we suffered a loss. And I really, really, really appreciate everyone. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for being here. I guess the only question that I didn't hear was like, who wants some pizza? Because I am absolutely starving, and I'm sure the rest of you guys are too. It'd have to be Joe's special pizza though. But I think I was really nervous going into this, and I still am really nervous. Holding a microphone up here in front of all you guys is really weird. But it's been kind of fun, and everyone's had laughs and stuff, and that's where I want to see the board go. I want to see the board become more approachable, and people that you can really talk to. Like the first time I got up and spoke to the board, I was really intimidated, and not that there's anyone in particular, and I'm not criticizing anyone, but and I know there are rules and we're professional, but I think we can address the community as they come up to the podium to talk and say, hi Josh, how's it going? And I think that'll help bridge the gap from some of the stress between the community and the board. And I think it'll get more people to get up and speak, and if someone's really got a hot head and they want to lay it on the board, and you invite them, it's going to kind of like cause a little bit of a reaction there, and I think it might subdue some issues. But I've been involved in this community in various ways, and when I first moved here and got involved, my wife was like, you didn't do anything in Florida. But there's so many opportunities out here, and we've met so many people, and everyone's been so awesome. And I want to, work for the community and dedicate my time to trying to help us be more successful and, building upon community pride. And that's where my heart lies. And thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you guys so much for coming out and supporting the candidates tonight. Thank you, candidates, for coming out. You guys did an amazing job. And just remember to vote. Tell your neighbors to vote. It's a hard choice. We've got great candidates running this year. So thank you for coming, and have a wonderful evening.